Ever since I started playing Tower Heroes, a question has always been stuck in my mind. Who is the best tower? But you see, now that I have every tower, there isn't really an answer on which tower is the best. All of them have their pros and cons, and, well, most of them anyway. Sometimes a tower can be better than another in a certain map, while the other is better in another map, which is why it's so hard for the community to pinpoint who the best tower is. But today, we're going to find out who truly is the best tower in Tower Heroes. Also, I will not be talking about Stella, because she is technically the best tower in the game, but to be honest, who would want to use her? She's not fun. And it'd be kind of boring if I said at the end, oh yeah, Stella's the tower, who would have known? First, we have to categorize our towers. We have damage, support, survival, and summoners. Let's talk about what I think has an obvious winner in this category, survival. Survival is the category of towers that are primarily used to survive waves, but fall off at the boss wave. It includes Keith, Hot Dog Frank, and Volt. I think we all know who wins this one, Hot Dog Frank, obviously. With his area damage and range, he is the best tower in the game for beating anything but the boss. And for the summoners, the game has a variety of summoners. Slime King is the basic one, Karka is the tanky one, Oddport is the barracks, and Jester is the funny one. There are also some very unique summoners too, such as Beatrice, Hayes, and Nuki. Let's be real, Beatrice just sucks. Even with my take, she's just the worst Hayes. Nuki is pretty decent, but takes up a lot of space. Although Hayes is pretty good, he's a bit too expensive, and compared to other towers as DPS, he falls behind. Nuki is even more expensive, and relies on his summon Nukis to do meaningful damage. That takes time, and thanks to the launcher's massive range, Unikas are never getting Spectre buffed. So I think the winner is obvious here too, and it's Oddport. They're good for early game, but like Slime King or Cart Kid, he can still be very useful in the late game, and they can deal a lot of damage just by ramming themselves into an enemy. But then, we have the support towers. There are a ton of support towers, and half of them are pretty much necessary for any match of Tower Heroes. But I think there's only one tower in this category that is truly required to beat bosses. Spectre. And that's not just me. Look, I ran a poll and people definitely agree with me. Although Balloonpelt is also a great support, probably the closest in terms of being the quote-unquote best support tower, thanks to Spectre's arguably more effective ability and his double damage at max level, he definitely has an edge over Balloonpelt. Lastly, we have to determine who the best damage tower is. This was the hardest one to pick a winner for because most of them are just amazing. But I think we can at least reduce the scope and focus on just a few of them. Scientist, Branch, Yasuke, Wizard, and Lure. Yasuke is the highest DPS tower in the game, no contest. With his ability to increase all his stats substantially, it's no wonder why many people in the community thinks he's the best tower. Scientist and Branch pretty much have the same damage output, although Branch has a lower DPS, he has a higher placement limit which allows him to catch up to Scientist in terms of damage. Scientist has a ton of range, while Branch has splash damage, and they've been meta since their release pretty much. Wizard is one of the less popular choices though, but people do think he's the best tower in the game. With his massive range being able to rival Scientists, and his ability which allows him to be the highest range DPS in the game, he's a very strong choice. But you might be wondering, you put all these meta towers that pretty much everyone agrees are the best towers in the game, why do you list out Lure? I mean, he's not talked about a whole lot, and Lure is kind of just another Scientist with less range. Well, that's where you're wrong. Although one Scientist has higher DPS than Lure, you can place 8 of them, making him do way more damage than just 5 Scientists. He also has stun immunity, which allows him to be more versatile for most bosses, especially those annoying ones that can stun your towers like Plastic Brawler. He's also way better than Scientist in terms of early defense. 1 or 2 level 2 Lures can pretty much carry early game with little to no difficulty. With all this in Lure's favor, I think Lure is a better tower overall than Scientist. He has better crowd control at earlier levels, deals more damage than Scientist in the late game, and has stun immunity for bosses that can stun. You can argue that Mytik fixes the stunning issue for Scientist. This is true if you're playing solo, you probably don't want to spend the whole tower slot just for her. I also think Lure is better than Yasuke. Although Yasuke has way higher DPS, if a boss is even remotely fast or the second phase, Yasuke is not doing anything to the boss. And odds are, if you're playing solo, you don't have any other defense to finish it off, because activating all 12 Yasuke abilities costs a lot of mana. Wizards are also pretty much only good for the hardest of maps, because for him to actually deal damage, you need to spend an absurd amount of mana, which you can pretty much only acquire in the hardest of maps. With the best damage tower finally established, let's pit the winners of every category against each other and see who wins. So I ran a poll asking players who the best tower among the 4 winners was. You know, Balloonpelt and Reclusive Spectre, because before Balloonpelt actually won at the time I made this post. Although it was close, Spectre wins with 41% of the votes. But which means we have our winner. Definitively the best tower of Tower Heroes is Spectre. Lizzie. Remember what I said at the beginning of the video? All of them have their pros and cons, and, well, most of them anyway. Although, yes, Spectre is undoubtedly one of the best towers in the game. We can never really decide which single tower is the best. Without damage towers, who is Spectre buffing? Without survival towers, how are you going to defend against the waves in hard mode? Without summoners, if enemies get past your front line, who is going to finish it off? With all this in mind, I think I have our answer. There is no one best tower in the game, but there is a best tower in every category of towers. So the winner isn't Spectre. It's also Hot Dog Frank, Oddport, and finally, Lure. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.